right, welcome to Flying for Flavor. I'm not sure what episode number this is. 51, I think it will be. We are live in our tasting room, and we have guests today. Mm-hmm. And not only that, for a rare thing, the entire crew is here.
Yes. Cheers
Which is very rare. So Deke, Stacy, and Cynthia are all here with me today. And then we have a couple other guests with us. Nicole, Rachel, and Stephen, and they are all travelers and wanted to come and put their 2 cents in because we thought this was kind of an important topic, and I wanted to get a wide range of opinions. Ever since I saw the one tweet from David Frum on Twitter about a week or so ago about how business owners who are working near the border are starting to encourage or discourage people from going across the border because of horror stories they're hearing, reading about, whatever, hearing from friends. And I know that when I'm planning my travel, because I travel a lot, that I'm starting to hesitate or change my mind, do different searches, eliminate certain places to think about. And I thought if I'm doing that, there must be other people who are also hesitating, or maybe not. Maybe it's just me and I'm being paranoid. But I wanted to have kind of an open discussion. So for all of you at home, this is going to be fairly casual. Think of it as a dinner party. But even though we're not supposed to be talking about politics, we probably will be at some point. We'll try to keep our political banter to a minimum so that it's more about the actual topic at hand. But we're eating and drinking, so there'll be noise and glasses clinking, so please ignore all the sounds. But we're trying to have a little bit of fun while we're doing this today. And if you have any questions or comments about anything that you're hearing on today's show, feel free to post it on our Facebook page, or you can always send us an email at flavor@stephaniepichet.ca. Okay, so I want to start out with a couple of stats that I read, and then we'll basically open the floor. So surprisingly enough, even though Donald Trump won the U.S. presidency back in the fall of 2016, articles I was reading back in the fall of 2017 after about a year, so this is after the travel ban went into place and all these other things, surprisingly, Canadians traveling to the U.S. did not go down, it went up. And it has to do with the loonie. So they're thinking that it might be an effect of the 150th anniversary that we had celebrated here in Canada the year prior, so that I think that the numbers and stats of tourists staying in Canada were maybe falsely up a little bit, whereas the following year, of course, now they might be looking like they're up, but they're probably down a little bit. So there was a bit of a strange anomaly that may not be relevant for future years. But they're also saying that even in this final year, I just finished getting I think it's a Globe and Mail article, I found a couple of other ones, I'll include the links in the show notes. But again, as long as the loonie's doing okay, Canadians overall are not hesitating to go down to the States, whether it's to go down shopping, across the border, whether they are flying down to Florida. There doesn't seem to be a lot of hesitation. So I wanted to open it up to find out. We can just go around the room or state your piece, but who's changing their travel plans, or if not, why not? Who wants to start?
I think there's been talk around potentially not so much completely ruling out visiting south of the border, but more around choosing where and when you're kind of going as well. I know in our circles, we've had a lot of people who like to go to New York who've been a little bit more hesitant. Pardon me, I know when I visited New York, it was right in between the election and when the president took office, and the security and the just trying to walk down Fifth Avenue in New York was a nightmare, because you literally couldn't walk past that stretch where the Trump Tower is, which happens to be right next to Tiffany, which is my favorite store. But just to get through there was a bit of an ordeal, and that certainly gets people nervous and excited, because we don't typically see that so much north of the border. So I haven't heard so much that people have stopped traveling there altogether, but they're thinking of being a little bit more cautious about where they're going or what time of year they're going.
I think that's happening in more like major tourist places, like around, like even in Toronto with the CN Tower, they're starting to put like roadblocks all around, make it a little bit tougher, but now you're going to have to give yourself extra time for doing it. And I think all the major places, I haven't been to New York in a couple years, but yeah, that would be a likely target just because of who the U.S. president is. And I think it's something that you're just going to get used to. when you're going to the sites, you're gonna still see a lot of, if it's police or military presence, even major attractions around the world, there will always be that presence. You just kinda get used to it and just kinda go on your merry way.
I'm sorry, I'm never gonna get used to seeing camouflage or military gear.
Yeah, I agree. But if you think about it, we say that, but remember when the TSA restrictions came in after 9/11, and how dramatic a change that was for us. So what was so bizarre and uncomfortable before is now normal for us. Now we're like, oh yeah, of course I can take my shoes off, or now I can't travel with liquids ever, which was not an issue pre 9/11.
I'm still not used to it, and I still don't like it.
Oh, I'm with you on all of that. But it's become our normal. We just accept it and expect it now.
It's unfortunate that a small percentage kind of ruins
Yeah.
it for the majority of us who are fellow travelers, who follow the rules, enjoy going in, I call it like other people's homes, so to
Yeah, other
speak, as a
people's
guest.
backyards.
But there's always that 5% that just pushes the envelope, unfortunately, or needs to make a statement that hurts the other 95%. And then some of the worldviews don't help the situation either, so. We just, as I said, it just becomes a new norm, and you just kind of get used to it. Just go with the flow. Just trying to make some room.
Well, just the other day, a friend of the family posted on Facebook, sending out a political message, saying that she will be selling her condo in Florida because she doesn't want to be part or affiliated with a country, mainly Trump. And doesn't feel that since he supports antagonist behavior or whatever, basically supporting communists and trying to be their friends, then kind of pushing around Canadians and other allies. And she said, we're selling our condo. I'm sorry, I love my American friends, but at this point I'm making a political stand and I'm selling my condo in Florida. And she posted that on Facebook just this weekend. So
What was the feedback like?
I have no idea,
Oh,
but that's a pretty strong statement regardless. But yeah, like, you know, those sort of things change the way, you know, she says, I could travel anywhere in the world. I don't necessarily need to travel to the U.S. And that was her stand. So that was pretty strong, I'd have to say, from that one person, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a change of lifestyle at that point. It's not just
That's a snowbird deciding I'm not going there anymore. I can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah,
nice.
so
my parents
many,
just know we have property in Fort Myers and boys at Trump County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just that part of it. Yeah.
You're right by my parents.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're in North
Yeah,
Point.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Or I call it my future retirement home, but
Yeah,
I
exactly.
hope it's still there in 20 years.
So
Well,
you
actually
mean-
14 years, then I'm allowed to live there for the winter months.
Wow.
So counting
okay.
down, counting down the
So
days.
for, when you think about your family, Deke, about how they have property down there,
Yep.
have you heard a lot from family or neighbors that you know of there? Have you really seen a change in the last year or two, or are they just going about their business and there really hasn't been much of a change?
It's the change is when you're driving down the highway, you can you can spot out like Trump supporters. I mean,
The big
they're
flag.
vocal. They're it's beyond obvious. I mean, they're such fans, and it's everywhere as well. You know, we haven't heard any stories like of people not wanting to sell their condos and to move back and etc. and throw it back at them, but. And myself, I haven't been affected by that personally. I mean, no one that I personally know, in Florida, support Trump. So I mean, so that's a kind of a safety. But I mean, I've had the opportunity to meet people who are Trump supporters. I just refuse to. You want to hear the story?
Well, it's up to you. Yeah, it's time to share.
Well, there's
You're not naming names and they're in Florida.
No, but I mean, there's this woman who's a couple of years younger than me, and she had a condo, her own condo, in the same place where my parents have a condo, and she drove this white convertible Mercedes, and I noticed her, and she noticed me, and we ended up meeting in the pool, and we ended up talking about the election, etc. She was a Trump supporter. And then, like earlier in the conversation, she asked what I was doing. I mentioned I was going to a specific place for a drink later that night, and at the end of the conversation, she asked if she wanted to meet up with me, and I said, "Yeah, don't
don't bother.
Yeah. That was the
Interesting. So
closest-
that's
that
a
was-
bias on you, though. In all fairness,
Well,
did she-
and-
what did
and
she
that-
say?
And you know what? And I'll take it. I'll take it. It's just I don't want to sit down and have a social with someone who values those beliefs. You know, that's the closest I've ever come to actually feeling some sort of a reprimand or some sort of attention or any of that. Really, I've been to Florida twice since, and
There's been nothing.
there's been nothing. I'm not afraid of the border. I mean, the border is still kind of like, yeah, after 9/11 it got a lot more serious, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who had the experience of being Palestinian in Tel Aviv airport at the age of 8. I mean, so I mean,
and for clarification,
you guys are all
Raul has
eating.
very olive-colored skin, and and he looks like a.
Yeah, you're all eating, so I'm not going to tell you those stories.
No, I appreciate
Yeah,
that, but that's
yeah.
the challenge as well too. Is that I would worry being someone with olivey brown skin, being in a Trump kind of
Yeah.
pro-Trump area,
Yeah.
just from that. To the same point where I'm teasing you a bit, but in being biased
Yeah,
towards
no,
her, I mean,
totally.
I would worry that you'd have to worry about ballot bias in that same place
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Not that you couldn't take him or anything, but
yeah. No,
but it's like it's the same as I have a very good friend of mine from high school who we were close in high school, and of course we've moved apart and don't see each other. I haven't seen her in a very, very long time, and she's written some very impassioned things on my personal Facebook and on some of our posts as well too. I love her to pieces, but it's really hard for me to reconcile that she's very strong pro-Trump believer, and if she is listening, I love her to pieces, right? But it's been very
Yeah.
hard for me to reconcile that someone whose opinion and feelings I have respected for so long has such a complete different perspective
Yeah,
from me.
yeah.
Would that stop me from, potentially visiting her? I don't know. I might be kind of uncomfortable because I have got a pretty liberal standpoint personally in my own personal politics. So I feel like any conversation that might delve into that could become uncomfortable. But as far as traveling to the States ourselves, like I think about our dance troupe. So Nicole, who's visiting, was one of my dance mama squad. And I was kind of relieved that we didn't do a U.S. trip this past year.
Yeah.
I felt more comfortable that we stayed in Canada and did our nationals here, and it wasn't even like a conscious thing. It wasn't a part of the decision making, but I just went, oh, okay, good. I kind of feel better about that.
Put it this way, I have a good friend of mine in Florida, and he's a paramedic. He was a firefighter during 9/11.
Wow.
And he ended up leaving New York for Fort Myers, etc. And he's a Zionist Jew. He's
Wow.
a Zionist Jew, completely pro-Israeli. His parents are his whole family, etc. And I'm very much pro-Palestinian, right? We're friends. I'll be friends with him. I won't be friends with a Trump supporter.
But that's a different thing, right? Because, but here's the
It's-
fundamental
that should
thing,
speak
though.
volumes, though.
People, though. But that's my point. Is that at the end of the day, your pro-Israeli friend, a Zion Jew, is still got a good heart, cares about other people, and is not going. We need to kill. I'm hoping he's not saying we need to kill all the Palestinians since he's your
yeah.
friend. He doesn't want to kill you, so there's something there.
And he stands behind
it's
behind
tough.
the movement, right? And
It's
that's
tough.
a really true. He's seen me post things about what's going on in the Gaza Strip and stuff, and he's posted things, which would backlash against what I believe in as well. It just in that friendship, we just don't talk about it.
You put that aside.
We completely put it aside, and like there's a genuine brotherly love,
Yeah.
and we completely respect and honor one another. Aside from that, but I would not be able to have that kind of relationship with a Trump supporter.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happens if you were friends with them before and then you found out they're a Trump
I
supporter?
probably feel the same way.
That's been my struggle with my friend. And again, I mean, nothing. I love her still, and I
Yeah.
care very deeply for her. But I really struggle with that. Like it's really been a fundamental struggle. I mean, in our home, my husband was pro-Trump, and I was pro-Hillary, and he had this big thing over Hillary's
Yeah.
emails, and I'm like, okay, but we don't have racism, we don't have anti-gay, like we don't have all
Pretty
these
bad.
fundamental human things.
the emails.
Right?
Yeah.
I swear, and my son struggled with it because my son was like, "What is the matter with Daddy? Why does he like this man?" I said, "It's deeper than that. He doesn't actually support Trump's positions and all these kinds of things. It was
Just
like
has nowhere else to
least of
run.
the evils. He had nowhere else to run. He really couldn't support. At the end of the day, thank God we didn't have to vote
Yeah.
in that country because I don't know how it would have gone. But it was definitely a struggle, even within our home, like." Deep seated. My husband and I have never talked politics. We're always on the same page. It's the first time in 20 years we've had separate points of view. And I know we've really digressed from the topic. I apologize, Doc.
No, it's okay.
But
I'm
it's
also
that
thinking
idea of-
it's an interesting thing, though. But between the two of you, when you have to make plans and have to go someplace, I mean, he obviously then doesn't have any hesitancy to go
No.
to the States.
But you know what? For
you do.
him, it's more around. My husband's a different animal as well. I mean, I'm much more in tune with things and much more like things affect me in a deeper way. My husband's like, oh, we're gonna get blown up, we're gonna get blown up wherever we go, so let's just go do the thing. So he's got a different perspective in general.
Go
So
with a smile.
you know, exactly. He's like, whatever, just make sure I got a beer in my hand, I'm good. So a different perspective in that regard, but just this idea of this within the home is, and my kids are teenagers, so my son is very aware of what's happening around him and all these kinds of things. So the conversations happened, and when I finally went to bed the night of the election when I can't look at this stuff anymore. I was out of town, and my son texted me at 10:30 at night on his phone going, Mom, oh my God, he won. And I said,
remember that
honey,
day.
go to bed, and I will, we'll talk about it in the morning because I want to go to bed. I didn't want to think about it at that point. But to see that it impacted my son that much in a home with differing political views was really, really interesting. At the end of the day, my husband is like, no, and I had to make him say, can you clarify for your son that you do not support these kinds of things, like the travel ban based on, where you live and what color your skin is, and these kind of like, no, my husband doesn't support any of those things. For him, it was like that least of the evils, and if he had to pick one, that was the one he was leaning towards. Also, all of these things, all of these presidential kind of decisions and had not happened at that stage either. I like to think he wouldn't vote for him now, but we'll just keep that out of our marriage.
Maybe there'll be a future podcast, and Mark and I are going to sit down and have a few drinks.
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
To circle back a bit
Yeah.
about the travel and the rate of travelers people are choosing, I go back to even before Trump became president. Our dollar was really weak,
Yeah.
extremely weak, and I had a lot of travelers that said, "We're not going anywhere. We're traveling within Canada." So I had a huge increase in sales within the within Canada market.
Good.
As soon as Trump came in, our dollar skyrocketed. Around that time. You should have seen the bookings and people going out and buying American dollars and stowing them away in the travel side of things. I find that I think people, depending on where you're going, what you're doing, to get on any kind of a Caribbean, Hawaiian cruise, you need to get out from the States. So you're flying directly either from Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, straight into either Florida ports, like right into
Miami.
or Miami, Orlando, sometimes LA. So to get onto the cruises to leave. So you have to really figure that ratio of what you're wanting to risk versus what your enjoyment of the world is going to be. Do you hold back on something that you're interested in because of the possibility of something bad happening, pushing off of something bad versus pushing towards the future of having a dream and a goal of wanting to travel the world?
You can't live in fear. I think
agree.
that because
Exactly.
if you live in fear, then the powers
No.
beyond will win. You have to. I've been to, like I was telling Stephanie, I've been to 50 countries around the world, and some of the choices I've made, people say, "Why are you going there? Why are you going this place?" Because I want to experience it. And if it happens, something happens, well, then you deal with it. Like I remember going into Greece in 2011, just before they approved the first bailout. Just imagine if I was
And the
going
banks
through
were falling
Athens.
apart.
Yeah, when they're riding like in Athens, or I was in Edfu, Egypt, and they had a kidnapping in the same city as I was there, and it
Right.
didn't happen. I didn't find out until the news, but those things can happen anywhere. It can
Absolutely.
happen here. It can happen in Toronto. It can happen in New
Here's
York.
the reality.
and so
Here's the
forth.
reality.
Yeah.
reality is that
We've
it
had
did.
2 major shootings in
Yeah.
Toronto in the last couple of months. And we're seeing, or the van versus the shooting, but we see those things happen everywhere. You can't hide in your home forever.
No, you just
No, there's
it
a
happens. You
balance.
deal with it. You just deal with it, and obviously you do your best to keep yourself safe. Don't walk around as like a walking target. Like
Exactly.
right there, try to blend in if you're in a foreign country, and just go
No
with the
big maps. We've already had this discussion on
Put
safety.
your fanny pack inside your shirt.
Don't walk my fanny pack. It's not like one of those traditional ones.
It's hip these days to have a
Sheesh.
fanny
You
pack.
know that big map could start with good conversation with a local. I've had that before.
Yes.
But I would do that on my phone.
Yeah.
And
I think it
'cause
depends where you are. Too.
have great chats with locals.
I was in Moscow in the subway, and I was trying to read acrylic. It was
God.
the metro, yeah. And I'm trying to read like Russian, and I can't. I have this English-Russian Haitian map, and I'm trying to figure it out. And actually, a local
Does
in
this
her
match? Nope.
No, yeah, pretty much. That's it. And a local, like, just tapped me on the shoulder in her broken English, asked me where I was going, and I pointed, and she just grabbed me and she took me to the right platform. And you would never
nice.
expect that from
And that
Russians.
happens-
They're more to themselves, more reserved. But this was an example of them going out of their way.
Oh, geez,
She didn't have
tear
to.
the
She,
podcast about Russia.
so she didn't have to do that, but she saw me
Yeah, that's
struggling, and I would do the same if I would see someone visiting Toronto, for example. I would help
Absolutely.
them.
There is
Lovely
a lot of
humans everywhere.
goodwill. There is
Yeah.
a lot of goodwill when you
Yeah.
travel, so you make the most of it.
Absolutely.
Especially
I
if you
think-
travel respectfully.
Yeah, I think in terms of myself and my family, when we travel, when we decided we were going to start to travel abroad, outside of Canada, we made necessary steps. So getting a Nexus card is
Yay!
one of those
talked
great, fantastic things you can do.
Absolutely.
And it's a no-brainer. And coming from a non-travel background, if you're going to spend $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 on a trip, I think it's a no-brainer if you have the ability to pass the Nexus, is to take that day off work and go through the hassle and the trouble and pay the $50 per person and get Nexus approved. And I think once you are Nexus approved, traveling abroad, global entry back into the United States, whether you're flying from the United States, coming off a cruise ship, doing whatever, it makes it easy. Even road travel. Like when we
Absolutely.
traveled across Canada, my family and I last summer, we were on a road trip this time last year, and our whole family has Nexus. And when we crossed the border at Vancouver, BC to Washington State, that lineup, non-Nexus, was hours and hours long. People were outside their car having picnics. And we passed 200 cars, I swear. We were like, who sent us to the VIP lounge?
Yeah.
And it was like, and we were fifth car in line, and we were across the border.
It's
in no time.
definitely an advantage.
So that would be the biggest tip, I think, for
When
me,
traveling
bringing
to
to
I'm
the
going to
table.
include the link to the Nexus application again.
Absolutely.
For the show
And
notes.
you know what?
Absolutely.
In terms of Sudbury, if you're tapping into this audience, it was a drive, a day trip with the family to Sault Ste. Marie after the Nexus was approved to get the fingerprinting done and the eye scan done, whatever they did. And we got it done, and
It's
Nexus,
very quick.
Eyes
Nexus,
scanned? You have to get your eyes
yes.
scanned?
You get your iris scanned.
yeah, they don't do
Pick on your fingerprints
it. They don't do
from-
it in Sault Ste. Marie, but they do it
Sarnia.
in Niagara,
Sarnia.
in Sarnia, but
In
they'll-
Toronto.
in Toronto, but you can say you're going to Buffalo Airport or whatever. There's the border there. You can get your eye scan done there. It's very easy. And let's not forget that children under 18 are free for Nexus enrollment. So you just have to pay for adult, which is $50.
And you know what the tip is then is make sure your kids, if they're 17
Yeah.
and a half, go get it because it lasts until
For
your
5 years.
passport
Yeah.
your passport expires the next time.
And
Cool.
we have
So-
saved so much time and energy with global entry and Nexus.
Absolutely.
And it is the biggest tip if you're traveling abroad today.
I would agree.
Yep, Stacy and Steph swear by it. Deke and I've never looked into it.
No.
Yeah, but for $50,
It's well
Right.
worth
Especially-
it.
especially
When
you
you're
said the
spending
kids-
$5,000 trip, like
Now
it's
that you
like
said
it's
there's
a
no
drop in
extra
the
budget
bucket.
for
Or
kids.
multiple times. You're going to the States more than one occasion.
and I actually use, like, I have mine always with me, and there's even for travel where I'm going to be going down to Toronto and then maybe going to New York, if I only have to take my Nexus card with me, right? Or there's
yeah.
times where I need for an extra second piece of ID for something, having the Nexus card qualifies and I don't necessarily need to carry my passport.
So you don't need your passport if you have your Nexus card?
No, that not to go to the States necessarily, but a lot of times just to get on a plane to show your ID because that's gonna be a whole other show. But there's going to be a time that driver's license won't be enough.
Do you have
In the
to
States,
have
they're already
passport,
starting
yes.
it.
Do you have
Pardon?
Nexus?
Of course.
Huh.
Yeah.
I would.
We're in the dark ages, Deke, you and I.
I've had it for 5
So,
years.
Deke, in the show notes, there's going to be a link.
Wait, Steph, where do we find those show notes again?
It's the little highlighted blue thing that you see when you're listening to this podcast. So, one of the things I wanted to mention, however, is I've also heard from people, and I don't know if we were talking to people at the airport, that there are some Nexus and Global Entry cards that are being revoked after the fact, and it is for people, it is for Canadians who maybe have dual citizenship with another country that the Americans are concerned about or angry with or whatever. So dual citizenship, I would just keep that in mind. So one of the other things, of course, is that when you go through this process with Global Entry, it's great for the Americans and their border patrol because they know everything about you, where you're going, what you're doing, that kind of thing, who you are, and that gives them, they love information. But the other thing is that if you don't want them to know everything about it, just got to keep that in mind because That's what that card is for, to sort of track your travel.
Absolutely.
But if you're just a vacation traveler or an occasional business traveler, it's the pros outweigh the cons like 10 to 1.
Oh, absolutely.
So just keep those kind of things in mind about, because I know a lot of friends who are, or I know some people who have dual citizenships with other countries. So depending on what that country is, just keep that in mind.
And
You know, if it's a first world
everybody-
country, you're okay. Those third world countries, we don't like those people.
And everybody,
That is not actually my point of view. So
and everybody in your group has to have a Nexus card. That would be
Yes.
the other key thing. So if you bring
Yeah.
your mother with you and she doesn't have Nexus, then you're going through the regular.
It's not like a Costco card where you get to bring your friend in.
That's right.
Yeah, right. So then I've had debates, depending, I usually travel alone, but if I travel with a friend or something who doesn't have it, I'm like, see ya, I'm in Nexus, I'll wait, I'll grab a coffee for you on the other side.
that's what I was
am
thinking. I'll
not-
meet you at the bar on
I'll
the other
meet you at
side.
the bar, and I'm sorry, because the thing is that no, if you're traveling with me, either you get it, or you're gonna be waiting
And a
in line.
cruise port terminal.
Shit, I better get my
Sounds
card.
like
You guys gonna leave me in your dust?
terminal is
You guys
the
be
best
drunk
place
before I
to
get
have Nexus,
there.
I swear.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm harsh, but hey.
That's okay. So we talked about that. Are there any particular states, for those who are traveling in the States, are you choosing your travel based on the states? If you are hesitating, or are you choosing one over the other because of what's going on down there? Are you noticing anything?
No.
You're not giving it a second thought?
No, because at the end of the day, the people in the U.S. love Canadians and we love
They do.
Americans.
Correct.
And abroad, we all get along, and so most people are accommodating and friendly and nice and caring, and so
So no protest vote?
no protest vote on my end.
I have to admit that I think I've only gone to traditional blue states. For those of you who are not up in your politics, blue would be the Democratic side. California and New York, right? So both of those were already against Trump. And just to give a bit of background in case you haven't listened to previous episodes, I remember which episode it was, I talked about this, but I was landing in LA when the first travel ban was happening and all the protests started. So within a half an hour after I landed and we got in our car to go to the airport, our driver told us afterwards, because he was the one that brought us back later that week, that he said, you just missed it. By the time we got to our hotel in downtown LA,
I did start up.
it already started. And there was protests in the LA, like all of the airport was blocked.
Sure.
LAX was just a zoo.
Wow.
But the funny thing is that you can go around Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, you can go whatever. There wasn't a mention, I didn't see a sign. We spent basically 5-6 days in the area, Santa Monica, never heard a peep.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I think every time there's a travel ban, I seem to be going down to the States. I don't know what's going on. So there was another thing where they tried to push it through again, and there was other stuff going on. And Norm and I were flying to New York that time, and we were going through Porter, and so we landed in New Jersey.
Newark, okay.
Yep. So the interesting thing is, we have never got through the Newark airport so quickly because there was nobody there.
I've had that before.
And that
Protesters
was
were
the
elsewhere.
most stunning thing, because regardless of whether we had Nexus or not, there was probably 3 other people besides us that were
Wow.
going through, like, it was quiet. And this was like at 9 o'clock in the middle of the week, which you think business travelers would be going back and forth. We have never seen it that quiet. So we don't know if it was just timing or what was going on, but we breezed through customs that day.
But when I think about your blue state versus red state versus kind of travel, I mean, I think I've always had that kind of in the back of my mind, and it's not because I don't like people who support Republicans. It's not that at all, but it's that mentality. I was talking to a friend today who lives in like a city in Ontario, and he was talking about whether or not he would move out into further out into the country to have kind of a bigger property and a bigger yard, those kinds of things. And he said honestly, he said he couldn't move out there. He said because the volume of like Confederate flags and different way of living and quite frankly different mindset out there. He said he couldn't deal with that and raise children in that mentality of discrimination and the like. And I said I think I have to say that anytime we've ever considered travel, we've never even considered kind of that Bible Belt area, and I don't know if it's just like a randomness of where the attractions are that attract us, or if it's a culture thing, or what it is.
Was Nashville and North Carolina. I was in Charlotte,
So
and I was in Nashville, and I can't remember what color essentially the majority of the people are there. But Nashville never saw or heard anything either. And the interesting thing was the following week, we just left, and I think within the next week he was doing, Trump was doing one of his rally / campaign things, right? There the following week.
He wasn't golfing that day.
He was not golfing that day. It was so and we see in the news. I was watching some of the coverage, and they were showing it, and he filled one of the major arenas, which was right around the corner from our hotel.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that,
Like, they're
okay, so where
quieter
are all
there.
these people coming from? There was nothing. We didn't see anything. We were in hotels. We were at all the usual spots in Nashville. Never saw or heard anything. We leave. But all of these Trump supporters seem to come out of the woodwork,
Now,
and we were all there.
Could
to
be
give credit,
propaganda.
but to give credit where credit is due as well. Not every Trump supporter is a Confederate flag waving, KKK, racist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I mean, I'm going to give some amazing people the benefit of the doubt that not everyone has that side of his platform there, and I kind of have to. So I feel like in a place like that in Nashville, where you've got a bit more of a mix of your kind of different perspectives and political spectrums, especially with country music happening in there, that it may not be the kind of place where it's as pervasive of that type of culture. But I think about it, I mean, you know, I came of age in the 90s when new country was a big deal and was played in the bars all the time. Toby Keith is coming to Sudbury.
Yeah.
Toby Keith is coming to Sudbury. I was a huge Toby Keith fan 20 years ago, but there's no way I could buy a Toby Keith ticket because of all of his support of that Republican side, and when the Dixie Chicks were like down on the bushes and they went all crazy. So he's just got a very strong Republican Trump kind of side, and I can't give him
I
money.
didn't know that. I don't really follow it.
And it was just one of these, because like 20 years ago, like the Dixie Chicks came out and said they were embarrassed by Bush Jr., George W. Bush,
Right, yeah.
and he led the campaign to
W.
destroy their campaign, to destroy their careers and their lives over it.
Do you remember those days when all you did was say something bad about the president and
Right?
everything?
And now you can float a balloon in a 20-foot balloon in a different country, and it's like accepted by government. It's amazing.
That beer's
Anyone
fair.
else drinking this before I drain it?
Yep, you want that one, and then there's other ones in the fridge, and then there's.
Just to highlight though, one thing, I used to travel like a great deal for work from Toronto to Boston down to New Hampshire area, and I know we were all sort of gauging where the flags are and stuff on the houses. It's actually, I found it kind of, I don't know how to say this, but I found I was sad as a Canadian watching how patriotic they were and how they supported their sports, how they did things very differently than we do here. And I mean, they would have flags out, doesn't matter what day of the week they had them, and they used to have those beautiful wraparound homes. Their whole front porch was tacked with a massive U.S. flag, and I mean, there's something to be said about that. And I mean, we do it a lot more covertly.
Yes.
However, I mean, there's just so many things that we could go off in different directions, but I think that just, it's, you know, I've traveled. I mean, I travel basically, I think, to find, like, wanted to go shelling, so I went to Sanibel and Captiva. Didn't even think about Florida or, you know what I mean? Like, it's Naples. Go to Naples to go off the, you know, do those things. I want to go on a cruise, doesn't matter where I'm going. It just fly into whatever closest airport is and go with it. But
Well, it's good to hear. So you don't have any regular travel clients that have been changing their usual
not
travels?
lately. No, I mean, initially there might have been a little bit of a scare, but no more scare than, you know, when Jamaica had a little bit of a, you know, a state of an emergency.
I even asked you about that.
Yeah, no, and I'm just saying it's the same kind of like, oh, should we be concerned? And I said, no, I would be more concerned about going to Mexico and drinking tainted alcohol at an all-inclusive than I would be traveling into Jamaica or into the U.S., to be quite honest with you, because how many of us even double think that our, you know, the all-inclusive resort, or however you say it, that alcohol could be something wrong with it. Right? Those are the questions. And I mean, we travel. Yeah, we travel.
The ice,
No,
the
this
ice.
You never heard about that?
The thing is,
What am I missing?
We're fine with that.
the thing is that I find is that you just have to be aware of where you're going. Be open to the fact that anything can happen, just like it can happen. Like, let's go to Toronto last night. I mean, how many people are going to be going to the Greek Festival and the Danforth in 2 weeks? I mean, that's the huge tourism thing for them. And it's stunning. I've been there before when I lived in Toronto, and to see that happen, I mean, it happens everywhere. I mean, so it can happen in Greece, it can happen in, you know, Spain, it can happen anywhere you travel, Jamaica, I mean, Mexico, where people get, you know, it's, no, everywhere is the same, because for Toronto, somebody across the sea, in the pond, actually, Toronto is like, for us, going somewhere where we think might be dangerous. They might think that now too. So I mean, it's just a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
Well, the media doesn't help. It's a kind of like a double-edged sword, where that's where we get the majority of our news and our information
Absolutely.
from. But as I said earlier, there's so much misconceptions, and there's so many great, wonderful places you can go
Absolutely.
and visit, and you just got to use common sense. Just common
Absolutely.
sense, and know your surroundings and so forth.
Okay, so there's a good topic. Do you think that because of things like social media and access to information and the round-the-clock news, I'm not going to use all the traditional terms and things that they like to say on TV, but
news.
MSN, right? Mainstream media. But do you think that because they are there, you can get information and stories and articles, whether they're true or not, on an ongoing basis? Have you ever talked to somebody who's thinking about going to a certain place, but they heard this crazy ass story that was not even remotely true, and they're I'm not going there because they do this to people, right? Like I know there's that stuff online because I've actually seen it. I'm actually starting to get, which I find interesting, on YouTube, because one of the things about social media is that you're starting to get or ads are targeted to specific people. So now when I'm catching up my news, because I'm one of those nerds who doesn't, I watch all my news online because I don't have regular TV. So I subscribe to things like CNN, MSNBC, some of the other news channels, and then I just watch certain topics or clips or whatever based on something that I want to watch, right? As opposed to people just screaming at each other on TV. I can skip that. However, now that I'm pressing play, I'm noticing now that I'm getting the so the other side is now targeting ads to me from the States, which is bizarre, because it was one of those things that I listened to and they said, now you can get this new channel that's 24/7 and it's the real stuff and none of this other mainstream media, and it gets that deep voice, like an InfoWars type thing, and they're putting clips of all these people and making it sound like it's so scary. But it's showing up on my YouTube. Now it's one of those ads you have to watch the whole thing.
Ones you can't skip
And then
anymore.
for the first so many seconds before you can skip ad. But the fact, I've never seen them showing up on my feed before, and it's only been in the last few weeks.
No.
And do you remember I think it was the last taping we did, or the taping before, we were talking about that website where you can go for travel to, and I can't remember what it was, about travel and doing something about it. Well, the next day, and I'd never heard of this website, and I was like, I need to find it, and I wrote it down on a piece of paper. The next day, I sent you a message, and I said, look what just popped up on my Facebook ad. Was the exact same thing that we had been talking about. So
Tribe is listening.
I wonder if, like, tomorrow, check your phones and see what kind of ads are coming up, because
It's
chances
already
are,
happened for me.
yeah,
many
and
times.
chances are you're going to start seeing some of the things that we talk about in a group setting with your phone around.
We were in Barcelona last October, when the riots were happening. We were just on the cuff. It was like kind of going on, kind of not going on. We were in the main square. I can't remember the name exactly.
Ramblas?
Yeah, Ramblas. Yeah, right there.
Stefano.
I sent you some nice photos. It was really good.
That's where everyone goes to drink. So.
And
That's why Nicole was there.
that's what I was there. And
By the old bull ring, right?
where
That's
that
the old
barricade was
I don't know if I
from
can move over
the killings and everything, where they had rammed in and all that sort of thing. And there was protests going on over the change of government. And anyway, I have a big perception that a lot of it is propaganda. Everything is blown up. My father didn't want me to travel. I said, we're going. We went. Did we see any active protests? No. We did go, we were cruising, and so we went for a 7-day cruise, and then we came back to Barcelona to go on another cruise. But when we were there that particular day, there was protests. Did we leave the cruise ship that day? No. But we had totally enjoyed Barcelona for 3 or 4 days prior to the initial cruise, so we didn't really feel like, okay, we don't really need to go. But a lot of it too is, you have to know the difference between propaganda and...
Well, I think that goes back to, I don't like using the term educating yourself because it's a matter of being aware
Yeah.
and reading all different sources, talking to travel agents before you travel, talking to friends who have been to those locations. Sorry, gotta give you a plug, girl, because you're there.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
But if you go to, or other people who have just recently put a shout out on Facebook and say, hey, I'm thinking I might want to go here next. Anybody been there recently? And then you can kind of message back and forth and get some real time information from someone who's traveling there as opposed
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
the big scary stuff that you always see on TV.
And also a great indication to speak more to that is the fact that if you're at, let's say, on a cruise and there's something going on, if it's that serious, they're going to cancel all their excursions.
Exactly.
If they still run, chances are, as long as you stick with the group, you're fine. I wouldn't go off to anywhere. I wouldn't do the same thing on an all-inclusive. I wouldn't do anything like that. You have to be aware of where you're traveling. If you travel alone and you do different things, wonderful. Just being aware of what's going on in the world politically and that kind of thing.
Well, I think like anything else as well, if you're easily susceptible to messages and you're not willing to do your homework, then you can buy all the things and be afraid in your basement. I think that if you're willing to, like you say, educate yourself and get the other side of things and do your research, then there's no reason to be, but again, at the end of the day, whatever message you're susceptible to, whether it's coming from the right, the left, the middle, mainstream news, or your neighbor on Facebook, you're going to hear the message that you want to hear.
And just another plug for the travel industry as well is that if you are traveling, the one thing about coups and riots and all that stuff that go on in places sometimes is that make sure you have insurance to cover you if you need to get back home. The interruption.
Are there
trip
people traveling
interruptions.
without insurance?
Yes.
Oh yes, there are lots of people.
Really?
Lots of people. Because it
We
costs,
have an annual policy. We just
And-
renew
yeah.
it every year and be done with
Absolutely.
it.
And that's the thing. If you travel more than 3 times a year, you're better off getting an individual annual policy because the cost point is almost cheaper than if you were to individually price out 3 different trips at 7 days a week.
I do tours and it's mandatory. You have to show when you go to
Exactly.
orientation. You
Oh,
show
yeah.
here's a copy of your passport and here's my insurance and then my next of
Medical.
kin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If not, you're not going on
Oh,
the
I didn't
tour.
know that. I mean, I don't do a lot of tours or
Yeah.
group tours, but I had no idea that they.
And make sure you have a good
Mandatory.
comprehensive policy too. You
Well,
wouldn't
that's
want
good
to
Yeah,
get
don't
because
just go for the
if something
cheapest.
happens to you, you need that tour manager, that tour leader to kind of guide through all the stuff and do all the process and
Yeah.
make the phone calls. And if you're not capable of doing it,
Actually, when I think about that, the group tour, only group tour we've done in the last so many years was China.
Right.
And there was a long list of requirements to go
Oh,
there.
exactly. Yeah. Like the visa and all that stuff.
Yes,
right.
there's
Exactly.
a lot of paperwork that
I
go
hear
there.
you.
Mhm.
And I think though too, it's just making sure that you have the right policy, and that's asking a travel agent because everyone sells it, and we want to make sure that if you're going to invest in a trip that's $5,000, you want to make sure that you put in another $600 to cover your butt because at the end of the day, if you have an illness or sickness, break your leg, and you need
$600 for a trip
it
insurance?
depends. It depends. It depends.
That's what they say.
Do you want to know something? It's better being able to have that insured than actually getting stuck in a country and you have to cost out airlift yourself home. Get another if you
Yes,
lose.
it's just, I wouldn't have imagined
Yeah,
it would
you
be
think
that.
the worst scenario when you have to bring it back. Unfortunately, when it comes to
Yeah. So I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, so I figured this is good time as any to talk about the beer that we're sampling, for those of you who are sampling the beer. So the only reason I wanted to bring them up is because there's been a couple of times here in Sudbury where I've had to find a place. I was going to do some work for an hour or so prior to an event somewhere, and I've been spending a couple evenings at the Laughing Buddha here in Sudbury. Big shout out to the Buddha, because they have a great patio.
They do.
And the last few times I was there, wine is not what they're known for. Beer is what they're known for. And one of the things that I was really impressed with is that I'm really into sours now. For those of you who missed the other shows, I'm really into sours, and they had a really great sour called Uber. It's by Nickelbrook Brewing, and it's about 3.9, so it's a lighter style beer of a sour beer, and it comes in 3 different flavors. I think it's only 3 that I know of that I found online. There's raspberry, there's pineapple, which I haven't tried yet, and then I just found a peach one. But they're super light, great for the summer. Even for people who don't necessarily like beer,
No.
but Cynthia's still not, and
No.
it's still too
Sorry,
beery.
still too beery for me.
I happen to enjoy it. So not only can you find it maybe at your local pub or restaurants, but you can also find it at most of the independent grocers that are now carrying beer. So I actually bought a couple of the raspberry ones at the independent at the Four Corners. I've found it at Superstore. There's a couple other places. Interestingly enough, I'm not finding it at the beer store.
Isn't it interesting?
Yes, so I'm finding it at the LCBO. So LCBO, you can actually check the stock on it. So just do on the search bar, look for Uber, and you'll find it.
Because
and then
we know you all have the LCBO app.
you should by now.
Yeah, we're regulars.
Forgive my ignorance. I'm going to grab the bottle just to see, take a look at it. But where is this brewery located?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Which one is that one?
I'm gonna guess that
This is
because it's
raspberry
in our
That's what
it's
I
in our grocery stores. It's gonna be an Ontario craft brew.
Nickelbrook makes a
Okay.
really good root beer, actually.
It's Burlington.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Did
Oh, it's
not know.
Burlington.
Burlington.
So one of the reasons why you may not see it in the LCBO is because the LCBO only has so many listings for microbreweries.
Oh no, I'm
And-
finding at the LCBO, not the beer store.
But the beer
Oh,
store
the beer
charges.
store, well, it's
so,
even the same.
So the
Beer
beer
store.
store, they only let you place your stuff for free in the so many beer stores closest to you if
Oh.
you're a microbrewery.
Oh, look at you all knowing.
I know, right? So if you're not within one of the first, I think it's like 25 closest beer stores or something, they have to charge a fee if they want it to be beyond.
Oh, okay, so it's just too far. So if
So
we went
they're
to a
not
beer
gonna-
store farther
In Burlington,
south,
you'd probably get it.
okay.
Yeah.
And to add to that, when I sold a microbrewery beer, the listing cost a lot of money to even get one of those listings. So a lot of microbreweries can't afford the listing at a beer store, where the LCBO has the program. Sorry, I mixed it up, but the LCBO actually does have the promote Ontario, promote local, promote,
Yep.
and different. You know, the mixer packs are huge every year. They do mixer packs on purpose because that's how you get a listing into the LCBO.
I didn't know
Is
that.
it-
I didn't know that there was a certain distance you can be in.
I'm
in
not
regards to
aware of that,
Yeah,
but
I wasn't aware of
that's
that. I
new
thought
to
it was
me.
you had,
It
you had
was-
so many contracts and so
So it
many-
was new
It's not-
about two years ago or so when I was down in London. It was just getting put into place, and there's some like advertisement stuff.
And there's some
about it.
great microbreweries out there in Ontario and probably
There's
all over
tons.
Canada. Yeah.
So I'll have the links in the show notes to the LCBO listings, obviously, for those Uber beer if you want to give them a try this summer. And then as well, the other one I wanted to showcase, I may have mentioned it in a previous blog post, or if you follow me on social media, but the Exchange Brewery in Niagara on the lake. It's located right downtown on Queen Street. I fell upon this place because when I looked inside and it was so pretty, I thought it was a wine bar. And it turns out it's a brewery, and they actually brew a lot of their beers, and they actually allow them to ferment directly in the bottles. So they look like wine bottles.
I say, in all fairness, they look like wine bottles. So
Exactly.
Like a winery.
So we are very surprised to see. So one of Norm's favorites, my husband's favorites, is the peppercorn rye saison, which is a gluten-free style beer. It's also aged in red wine barrels, and I'm finding it again at the grocery stores. I'm finding it at the LCBO. Just this one, but they actually do a lot. So if you happen to be down Niagara on the lake, and for some silly reason you're sick of wine drinking,
What do you
head,
say?
head down to Queen Street at the Exchange Brewery. They have a beautiful little bar, and they do full flights, so you can try all different wine, beer. I mean, they have bottles like that you can just grab and go in coolers, ready to serve. But they also have a lot of like the standard growler type things that you can get refilled on an ongoing basis. But they always have a rotating tap list as well. But it's a very small place, but it's well designed. And as far as I heard, the owner's wife is the one that designed it. So hence the reason I thought it was so pretty. So shout out to the Exchange Brewery.
I'm a big shout out fan to the people who do flights inside brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep them up, do more.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
And
I do
try a
flights,
little bit of everything.
I love them.
And we do flights every time we come to visit Steph, but that's
we don't call those flights, those are just glasses. Flights are supposed to be sample pours, but anyway, that's a whole other show. So we will be doing the ones about tasting rooms coming up forward. There'll be a future episode. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to our original topic, and I wanted to talk about the new tariffs and the basically the money war that's happening between Canada and the U.S. right now. So right now, I think I posted it in a recent link, but I'll post the link again about all of the items that Canada basically slapped back on the U.S., all the new tariffs, and a lot of the products and things are not necessarily things that are going to change how your day-to-day stuff, but because we're not just talking about travel today, I also want to talk about food and drink. There are some items on there and some food products that are going to be taxed higher if it's an American-made product, And I was curious to find out if anyone is changing their grocery shopping habits because of the new tariffs, and or whether it's price point or whether it's just a general protest.
Actually, interestingly enough, it kind of ties into the first half of the episode here. I work with a lot of snowbirds, and a lot of them would never give up their Florida down south in the winter, but a lot of them are talking about how they're changing what they're buying, not because of price, but because they just don't necessarily agree with stuff. So they're not gonna give up their sun and warmth, but they are changing at home what they're buying and what
Buy
they're
their
looking at.
Frenches over their Heinz.
Yeah.
exactly,
If-
Yeah.
Are they going to bring
If
Frenches
this
down to
means-
Florida?
I'm not sure about that. Well, not in their carry-ons.
If this
but-
means that if this means that it's only vegetables that'll be like affected, then yes.
Here's
I
my
mean,
thing.
But
Here's
'cause
my
you-
thing
you don't
though.
need
If they're
vegetables?
taxing our
Yeah, they're only gonna
crappy
be-
vegetables we're getting from the States, and I'll just buy
Yeah.
Ontario vegetables, so they'll taste better.
Absolutely.
I'll
anyways.
just
Yeah.
stop eating vegetables.
Well, that too.
Oh,
So I guess I've got a different perspective because in my world, being the token with a couple of teenage kids, I'm just buying whatever's in front of me that is quick and fast
Yeah.
and getting out there. So there's very little that's changing in my world whatsoever when it comes to shopping. Just because we shop solely based on convenience and getting the kids fed into food they'll eat and not
That's
be
probably-
complaining.
I think there'd be. I think it goes along with what you just said. You know, buy more local, and I think there's enough great Canadian product to sustain. Sustain the market, so we wouldn't have to, dodge really any specific category because
Well,
we
I
get it
see-
all here.
I mean, I would say that in southern Ontario, yes.
Yeah.
I would say in Sudbury we'd be hurting a lot more.
You think so?
I do. Because we're seasonal, right? Right now we're
Yeah,
fine.
great.
Yeah.
But let's talk about January in Sudbury.
Yeah.
We would have potatoes and garlic. Realistically,
Unless
it's
you,
the stuff
unless
that
you
can be
can,
stored,
unless
right?
you're canning or
Unless you're
that's-
canning your own,
Yeah.
buying
Yeah.
frozen.
Yeah.
We're sorry, we're getting
Made from
hummus.
canned chickpeas, okay, fine. But that's the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
So
Canadian chickpeas.
when
use
we're
Canadian chickpeas.
there's so many Canadian chickpeas.
Shout
out
out
there,
to
right?
Sarah Small Batch for using Canadian chickpeas.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But that's the thing, right? In Sudbury, we're really locked. I mean, if we lived in the Niagara area, if we lived in, quite frankly, anywhere south of Barrie, we'd be in much better shape. And yes,
Yeah.
we'd have a lot
Okay.
more selection. But where we live, because we're in the north and not as much grows here
It's accessible.
and it's accessible, we would be hurt. I mean, we'd be probably getting more from Mexico.
Sure.
But the reality is, it would definitely hurt our grocery store shelves for sure if we just did not buy.
I'm
buy
interested
Ontario.
in the fact that the grocery stores haven't gotten smart enough to say, let's not put made in the USA on those fresh strawberries that are displayed front and center. Cause I didn't buy a single one of those fresh strawberries made in the USA fully advertised there. I went to Sturgeon Falls and got my strawberries this year.
Yeah, you go.
But yet the grocery stores haven't picked up yet on that food protest chain that seems to be kind
Yeah.
of developing.
Well, it
and
has to be
saying,
somewhere on it though, right? Because it has to be
Yeah.
on the stickers. Like, they can't lie and
No,
not.
but yet
They
there's-
have to advertise it
unless
somewhere.
they pre-ordered the produce and set up contracts beforehand. But I would say, why not source out and say, the independent grocer, let's bring in strawberries that say, from Canada or Ontario strawberries, and put them front and center for the month of June and July, instead of saying, which they're still there, made in the USA. And I'm like, great, you just told me not to buy these. And then how many people are not gonna buy strawberries?
So it is
because-
changing your buying habits.
It did, in produce that typically I would buy fresh strawberries in June and July, and I would say, yes, I'd want strawberries in June and July, and normally I wouldn't second guess where I got them from. This particular year, yeah, you betcha. Got my strawberries from Sturgeon Falls, thank you very much, and they were very good, they were better.
Oh, they're always
They
better.
weren't as
Absolutely.
convenient, but they were better, and I did make some great jam. My
There's,
mother
there's
did,
Ruby
and
Farms too, apparently.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
had
Yeah,
Beaulieu.
there's
Right
Beaulieu,
here as
yeah,
well.
I was thinking about Beaulieu.
so,
As a proponent of, and a big champion of local foods, we thank you. Because that's one of those things
And I
that
should go
we're
from
trying
like
to
Whitney
convince
to
people
Absolutely.
to
There,
eat
you
more
didn't bring me
locally
strawberries back.
grown
My mom did it
products
all.
and locally
So-
produced things here in Sudbury to start off with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or wherever you happen to be from. And if this Canada-U.S. thing introduces you or makes you second guess and start to look for more local products, at least you're trying them.
Yeah.
And even if the price goes back to where they were or the tariffs are no longer there in the future, I think that the fact that you tried a local product and saw the difference and whether it made or at least you had gave it a try. Where a lot of people don't even give it a try because they automatically assume that it's going to be expensive, not as pretty. They get all these excuses for it. Mostly price point is the biggest thing, but a lot of times they are better.
I've been doing a lot with my kids in the last year or so. We lived overseas for 3 years, and all of our produce was fresh. In fact, blueberries were funny because blueberries you couldn't get in Australia; those tend to be shipped in. But the vast majority of our produce was super fresh and super flavorful. Okay, I'm laughing so hard. What are you guys doing with that bottle? That's it.
Because that beer that you love, that raspberry beer,
Oh,
the
right, okay.
3.9% beer that you love so
Stacey
much.
needs her
it
glass.
says-
I need my glasses.
Oh, so Stacey
Recommended.
cannot read the bottle. That's amazing.
No, because it said recommended serving glass,
Give me my
a
cheaters.
goblet.
My cheaters.
There's fun.
Just an add-in to the food buying habits. I, in the last year or so, got into farm shares. And they're all over Sudbury.
Yes.
You can do meat, you can do chicken, you can do vegetables, herbs, all over. And you buy I think the last one I did was $300 and you get a half share or you get a full share, depending on how many people you're eating for. And you pick it up at the market, either on Thursday or on the Saturday. And it's a little bit, if you price it out to what you're buying, might be just a smidge higher, but you know what? If it's supporting local,
It's so
It's
much
convenient.
food.
and you know,
It's convenient
and
because
it's
it's,
It's
one
great
thing.
for
just-
big families because that was one of the issues. We did the same thing back when Eat Local was open, and we tried it for one summer, and I spent more time online trying to give away because when corn's in season, Lord help me, there's nothing. You get tons of corn in every single one, and right. So otherwise, I'm trying to cut it off and put it in the freezer, and so there's a lot of prep involved because there's a lot of food that you get. But if you want to split it with people, I think that's a great
absolutely,
option,
and it's
right?
a good bang for your buck with a large family to get all your veggies from somewhere like this.
Oh, and I
Okay.
just want to give a shout out. There's a new thing, and I'll put the link on it. There's a few farms locally here in Sudbury that just got together, and they just created an online shopping
Beautiful
farm and
way
stuff.
to
It's
go,
called
guys.
One Click Farms or something like that.
Nice.
So I'll
Nice.
put the link on it. I just saw it the other day, and so I know Three Fork Farms. My friend Peggy, that's her farm.
Okay.
There's a few others, but they're all kind of banding together, and you can order through. There's a link right on the Facebook page,
Perfect.
and you'll be able to actually order in products and stuff on an ongoing
That's
basis.
so amazing.
Yay for local food!
Yay.
Cool.
Anybody else? Steven, have you made a difference or thought about it or given it some thought?
Well, I think you always want to promote local anyways, doesn't matter what kind of situation we have between Canada and U.S. And I think there's a lot of great opportunities to support local farmers because that's their livelihood and that's what keeps them going. And if we have an opportunity to get something that's more fresh as opposed to it's been on trucks or in the plane for several days, absolutely. I was really sad that when Eat Local Sudbury closed down.
Me
but,
too.
But there were so many the different families and farms. They're now going to the local grocery stores, places such as like Chirini's or Richney Bakery. So we can
Smith's.
still Smith's exactly, and there's some great opportunities. So definitely take advantage. Think of local as well, and you. Yeah, it's probably the quality. Maybe it is a little bit pricey. You're right, but you're paying for the quality, and also you're helping keeping economy going in the Northern Ontario.
Absolutely.
I give a big shout out again to Peggy at Three Fork Farms, but I went to the Thursday market a couple of weeks ago and I bought chicken drumsticks because it was a funny thing in I can roast a whole chicken, and Norm and I are fighting over the dark meat, so why do I bother with a whole chicken? That's just a personal thing. So I thought, why bother? I was going to get chicken thighs, and they always have them packaged. You can buy just thighs or just drumsticks or whatever. The size of those drumsticks that I got, so as much as it might be more, they were huge. Like, these are not your little tiny drumsticks that you would get at the grocery store. They were huge.
Nice.
So like for us to do 4 drumsticks for the 2 of us, where normally I would have to do a few more
Yep.
for Norm, like that with the with salad and sides or whatever was more than plenty. So it's just a matter of making that change or whatever for it. But I was no, it was really good. I was impressed.
Oh, that
Gave her a
was-
little tweet with the picture.
I'm gonna have to
show
go
them.
try that out.
Yeah, Three
Check
Forks.
them out.
I was circling back to before Stacey's eyes got in the way of my I didn't have to read the bottle. But that was the same thing I was saying with my kids. So we had the fresh produce before, and then since we've come back to Canada, I've been really struggling with the produce here, not in Sudbury specifically, because I find everything tasteless, and I'm just not. I eat because I enjoy it, not because it's fuel. So I've got a very unhealthy relationship with food. But with my kids, I said to them, I bought fresh local, or we went to a berry farm, picked berries, strawberries and raspberries and stuff, like taste the difference. I'm like, the difference between one of those like grown in the USA Mexican strawberries and then one that was grown locally is like night and day. Yes, they're smaller, but you get more flavor, more punch in one little bite than you do in 5 bites of the other ones.
It's really
and
hard
that
to go
me is
back
worth
to
it.
the other ones.
It really is hard to go back.
Okay, so I had a couple of other things that were in this topic. So now we've talked about food, we've talked about travel, and this is not necessarily about the drinking part of it. We could talk about that when it comes to wines, because it's not just wines. It's talking about all alcohol. I've noticed, and maybe it's because I'm spending more time down in those areas lately, and I've been spending more time in Halifax, and I'm heading up to BC in the fall again this year. I'm not just enjoying, partly because the quality of the wines that we are producing here in Canada are just knocking my socks off. And when I compare them to some of the other country ones, I've noticed it's a very rare day that we have an American wine in our cellar now. And I never noticed it until I start actually coming to feed you guys. When I started pulling wines out or whatever to bring, or here's a wine I want to recommend for the show or something, and I'm pulling things out. I have a lot of Canadian wines now in stock, and I have maybe lots from travels from overseas and other places, but there's very few, like there's not as many, and even Norm was really big California wine guy, especially
So am I.
California
I
wine.
say I love.
Chardonnays.
I still love a good California red blend.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
me
don't
too.
mind, and I do like it, but I've found him comparables, especially with the whites here in Ontario or in Canada, that he's now
I'll
a
give you
fan
that
of.
with the whites. My whites, I tend to go to like an oak Chardonnay from Canada.
Yep.
But my reds are still to this day, other than like the odd Tempranillo or something like that, is if I need a go-to is a red blend.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to. I picked up
Yeah.
some stuff this weekend. So I'm gonna challenge you on that. I said I got a Cab Sauv. The other thing that California doesn't make is a Cab Franc to the extent that we do, and some of the aged ones that we're getting here in Ontario. Like some of the winemakers are just killing it, and I see, especially because the temperatures. The difference with California, why everyone like California, has to do with warmer climates, right? So the fruit are riper, more flavor. It's that bigger
You get the
bodied
fuller-
fruit bomb, right?
fuller kind of
yeah,
full-bodied
teeth
flavor.
stainer kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So then when you get to some of the Ontario ones where we've always not struggled with reds, it's always been a lighter style red that's
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
better in sales and appreciation because of all the global warming, the temperatures rising, the new climate changes. The quality of our reds now have increased to the point where
Interesting.
it's very impressive, some of the stuff that they're doing now. And I said I was just at Marinison, which is another episode. By the time you're listening to this one, that was look at the Chardonnay episode. But I was just there on the weekend, and they were talking about some of their Chardonnay vines got hit with the frost, the big frost that we had, so they had to pull them. They were very, very old vines anyways. It was very sad. It was very sad to see them all gone when I went there. But they are planting more Cab Franc only because they noticed now that some of the reds and the quality of stuff they're getting in the last few years that are so spectacular that they're actually upping the production of reds. And this winery was very well known for its whites for so long. So there's going to be a big change, I think, coming with our own Ontario offering. So anyways, I'm just trying to tell you, all you California fans, don't knock it down. Just drink
Oh,
local.
no. Actually, no, but even said no. Even I don't drink a Canadian red at all because I'll drink like a Spanish Tempranillo. I'll drink like a Chilean type red or a California, but I haven't found a Canadian one yet.
While we're talking,
we
can
did
I open
find me
you?
a beer.
Can I open one for you?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Because I've come to change my mind on that. I used to be a big California supporter, and I have found a couple of go-tos now in Ontario that are nice. They're very nice and different, but nice. And I mean, we used to be so
I
used
love
to.
a challenge.
We used to be kind of turned off.
In
by,
other words, Stephanie's driving Nicole and I home.
Especially when it includes a challenge.
Norm's upstairs.
I've been here since noon, so no.
I love alcohol challenges. No problem there. I'm gonna set up
I
Stephanie
didn't say you
for
have
one.
to drink the whole bottle. I just wanted you to taste it. For crying
Yeah,
out
I
loud.
just want you to taste it too.
I gotta taste it first before I go and make the big statement.
And this
God.
is why our podcast is fun, guys. You thought we just sat here, we're very serious the whole time. No.
I feel like at home.
Nicole was like, "There's no way it's as serious as it comes across."
No.
So what is this?
This is Laley Vineyards.
Oh, yes.
I do like Laley's whites, but this is their cab. From 2013. It's not going to be a fruit bomb. There's a lot of flavor to it. So if y'all want to give it a sample, yes, I'll have the link in the show notes. So this is a 2013, so there's some age on this. So it's not going to be it's very dry, which I like, so you need food with it. It's actually better with food.
Don't get Cynthia excited now.
No, but the interesting thing is, it's not like your gammes, your back
It smells amazing.
Yeah, see?
Can you grab an extra one too? For
Yeah, there's big glasses there too, in case you need to get your nose in there.
Are you red?
All right.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I'll take this one.
There's
I'll
lots
take
of glasses.
this one.
Pass them around.
I'll do this one myself.
I have a dishwasher. Don't worry about it.
That's nice.
Nice, eh? So just to show that there's some of the reds that are coming out, or the ones that are sitting there and are not ready for release yet. There are some really great options. There's a couple others. I said I just brought them home, so I was going to do an entire blog post on the Marinese lineup, just because they are friends of mine too, and I came home with another case.
But yeah, that happens.
But I did a full tasting with their winemaker. We went through all of their different Chardonnays. I mean, I even tasted ones that aren't even released yet, which was kind of cool. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the reds that are coming up.
What
Okay.
you're saying is I now have to go to like Niagara to get a bottle of that?
They are not listed. The Marinese is not in the LCBO, so
I
that's the
know.
Chardonnay that I have here.
No, the
that I was
Lily.
sipping on. The Laley, I'm not sure if that one's going to be available online. Did you check it?
But
You check with your app?
I'm gonna check right now.
Yeah.
It's actually really nice.
Yeah, it's not bad, eh?
Yeah, it's really good. Flavor and.
Yeah, so that's the
You
whole
have
thing.
the
Like,
app?
don't knock the Ontario
Yeah,
Reds, peeps.
I don't.
There's some really good.
It is not in the LCBO.
Nope.
No.
Okay. So, anyways, what I was commenting on is that because we are very blessed to have wine regions so close to us, and even Ontario, a lot of them have really great sales. You don't have to join a wine club
Yes.
to have them delivered to you.
Yeah.
I order whatever I want from whatever winery, regardless of if they're in the LCBO. I'll check first on stock. But if it's wines that are not in the LCBO, I have no problem. I go onto their websites and they ship. Sometimes they have shipping deals if
Yeah.
you buy 3 bottles and whatever. So don't hesitate to go directly to the wineries, and especially if they're on links in our show notes. I've already tasted them. I don't drink bad wine. I would never recommend something that's completely horrid. So if you want to try something out, trying a bottle, but go directly to the link. So I'll have the link for these ones.
Have you ever drank anything horrid?
Why, yes, we have.
Are you saying that as a lead-in because you saw that episode?
Have you seen that video?
You saw that.
I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
So I mean, we've
Do
told this
share,
story
please.
about like 5 times in the podcast, but it's so good we need to share it again.
Yeah.
So this is before we had a whole team too. It was just every once in a while Stephanie would be like, "Say, come drink with me. We'll do a podcast." And 2 hours later, we're drunk. We've got a couple of podcasts in the computer. So this particular time, she had brought a bunch of sparkling. You were gonna do a sparkling wine.
It was a
class.
sparkling wine episode.
And then we'd like let's just do an episode. So we tasted probably 5 or 6 sparkling wines, and the last one that we tried, or more. The last one that we tried, that was one of those times Mark had to come pick me up from your place.
He stayed for an hour.
and
That
have
was
a
a good
chat.
podcast.
It was a good podcast. That's back when we'd record for 2 hours and go, maybe we should edit it at some point.
You will actually see this clip of what she's talking about
On
on
Facebook.
our YouTube channel. as
YouTube
well.
too? Oh, even better. So, one of the last bottles Stephanie brought out was a Chilean demi-sec that she picked up at a road stop on the side of the road in Nicaragua. If that wasn't a red flag,
As one does.
if that was a red flag, I don't know what.
That's one thing I didn't do.
So,
Isn't everyone buying wine?
Right?
I'm taking notes.
on the side of a dirt road. So, and in all fairness, we had done an experiment, like a year before, for Steph's 40th birthday. She had bought a bottle of wine years ago that was brewed bottled the year she was born. So we tried this, it was on her 40th birthday, we tried this 40-year-old bottle of wine. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was like the best bottle of wine I've ever had. So I was willing to try an experiment, especially on camera.
Yeah.
And so she pours this sparkling, and in her glass it was like pink, and in my glass it was orange. First red flag. 2 glasses, 2 different colors. Okay, this is fine. And then I take a sip, and I'm like, oh, I'll try anything. I take a sip, and it's in my mouth. And I'm looking at Steph, and we hadn't, by now we've been recording together for a year, but we hadn't been recording together very much at that point. And I just kind of went, oh my God, oh my God, what do I do? What do I say? Because it tasted like vomit.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. It literally was like someone had thrown up in my mouth. So I've got that. I'm swallowing it down.
What
And I'm
color
trying
was
not to
yours
say
again?
anything. Mine was the orange. Hers was the pink.
Same bottle, right?
Same bottle, like 4 ounces apart. And so she looks, she goes, oh. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not good. And then thank God I could say it. 'Cause then, oh God, if Steph says it's good, there's something really wrong with my palate. No, this was terrible.
It was so bad.
really, really, really bad. I was like, oh my God, what can I wash it down with? Give me something, anything. So yes, so if you want a good laugh, go on our YouTube.
You can see the YouTube, the clip, but I think I actually even kept that right in the episode. But you see her, Cynthia, like getting up and clearing the glasses.
I was
and
like,
the
no,
bottle
no,
and
this is
stuff.
just bad. Let's get rid of this. Let's wipe this from our memory. It was amazing.
So yes, occasionally we do find a bad bottle, and I'm going to guess that had to do with, first of all, it was the heat, right, of Nicaragua. And again, I bought Chilean wine in Nicaragua.
Chilean wine.
I was just so excited to find a Chilean demisec that anyways, it's one of those wine shopping horror stories.
It was fun.
How's that for going off topic?
It was a great story.
It was a great story.
That's why you buy local.
That's why, but
Yes.
you notice, hence I'm buying more local.
Yeah.
So lots of it has to do with if anyone's gone over the border and having to talk about cell phone searches, or if you've changed your habit with your cell phones, iPads,
No.
business information. Have you heard
They
from
can have
anyone
it all.
who's it?
We joke about it at our home a lot. We're like, if they're gonna steal our identity and our whatever, they're getting all our debt with it. So have at it. We're in a
No, no.
situation that's not. It's not a big
but
issue.
that's not what the Customs and Border
I know.
Patrol are necessarily looking for, right? So there's a lot of rules right now on. They are allowed to ask if they want to see your cell phone. If you want to
Yes,
get
I
into the
have-
country,
that is weird to
you have to be able to see it. So it has to do with what's on an iCloud, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are storing things up in the cloud, if you have passwords to protect it, you don't have to download. If you have it on airplane mode, they can't force you to do that. But if you happen to have your Facebook open when you show them the phone and they want to scroll through and they can see your comments, your posts, your history, whatever else on it, that has been warned that could be used against you or whatever else. So there's methods to that. I know that when Alex, my son, came with us him and his girlfriend came with us to LA earlier in the year, he was joking around. He left his laptop at home because he's a little bit politically minded like his mother. So it was big thing was I sent him that article when I was reading about all the tips and stuff, and he said, I'm just going to play it safe, and I don't need anything but my phone. I'm good. So as opposed to him bringing his iPad or his laptop, he just not bothered to even bring it over because he said, what if they take it, or I can't live without it. So
There is some changes with that, I think, because the Border Patrol just recently in the last season that I traveled, whereas laptops were allowed to go through the X-ray machine, now they want iPads and iPhones. So obviously they've increased their technology enough to say, I don't know what's going through that machine, but maybe it's keywords or flags, I'm not sure, but it's going through the scanners for whatever reason, I'm not sure.
there was a recent article I found, and I was trying to look for the link of it, and I might include it in the show notes anyways if I find it by that time. But there was an article or something I read about how in the very soon they're at a point where you don't have to take anything out of your suitcase. The technology of the scanners right now is getting to be so advanced that it will be able to see if you have a laptop. It'll be able to check and see if it's an actual laptop. It'll be able to check and see if you have your bag of liquids all put away. It'll be able to see much more than it is now, which is great. Because I'm also thinking that maybe the body scanners can actually do the same thing as opposed to getting the
touch
pat
up
down,
and
by the older lady. I tell you what, the lady. Anyways, I don't mention much. I can keep telling Stacey every time
We have the
I go to a
funniest
particular
stories.
airport, and because I
Some
travel
not
through
so
a certain
funny.
one on an ongoing basis, and there's always
They like me.
one lady that she was supposed to give you the option of either doing the swab on your hands or doing the pat down. She doesn't give me the option. I'm thinking she likes my pat down.
Like, we can't all be as cute as you are, honey.
Yeah.
Some of us, they go, oh no, honey, just go.
I have to say, our family is a big fan.
Don't worry
of
about it.
crossing the border.
You're all right.
Sorry, Jake just went on a detour.
That's okay.
love you too,
Our
Jake.
family is a big fan of crossing the border by car and going to the Buffalo airport. and flying out of there as opposed to Toronto.
It's still now?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
without a doubt, especially if you're Nexus.
I looked at that
We
and I
cross
paused.
over. First of all, I could tell you it's super fast, and Buffalo Airport is easy
It's so easy.
for an international airport. If you travel a lot and you had to factor in the extra hour and a half it is to drive from Toronto to Niagara Falls and get a hotel in Buffalo, it
Cost
is
savings.
a no-brainer. It's like
Yeah.
a joy in Buffalo. First of all, you don't have to show up 3 hours ahead of time. If you're traveling via carry-on, I mean, you could be on the other side within 10 minutes. So it's
Right.
an absolute like night and day over traveling.
No, I've
Pearson.
never, I mean, I've gone to other border cities, like
Oh,
throughout
if you
Buffalo, but I've
haven't
never gone
tried
through
out of
Buffalo.
Buffalo, the airports are there. They're geared for Canadians. It's easy to book. They have park and fly just like they do in Toronto.
Big shout out to the Buffalo Airport.
And big shout out to the Buffalo Airport. And it's very well organized and it is easy peasy.
Are you flying domestic or international?
International.
We
International.
could fly international or domestic out of that Buffalo Airport. So
Anyone I talk
They
to
probably
is-
don't have the same traffic as Pearson has. Pearson.
Oh, gosh, no.
Oh,
big-
no,
No,
and,
no.
and it's the whole factor of
Yeah.
Pearson is so big, and
Yeah.
you have to cross the border at Pearson.
Yeah.
So you have to go through Border Patrol at Pearson, which is a whole other
Yeah.
situation. Whereas if you happen to be Nexus and you happen to be crossing a border by car, it's always been, I can't say sometimes, it's always been easier for us, and we have done it well over 10 times
I agree.
both ways, and it comes to the point where we're booking flights for a trip next winter, and we're looking at flying out of Pearson, and it's not about cost savings for us, it's about ease and convenience, and I will almost try to convince them to pay slightly a little bit more, even with our weak dollar right now, pay a little bit more to fly out of Buffalo, because that airport is a
It's
breeze.
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
It's like going to see St. Marie's Airport. Technically, it's like just an internet. It's like a
They probably don't,
domestic.
as I said before, they probably don't have the same amount
They
of
have
people.
Nexus, they
Yeah.
have your things right there, if,
Everything.
Pearson's like
online
kind of like your
everything.
go-to place.
Yep. A lot of people think that's the
Yeah.
the
the
hub
only
to
thing,
fly
yeah,
out
but you're
of.
right,
it's
there
the
are
only
alternatives.
option, they only think
Yeah.
that's their only option,
Yeah.
and I'm saying that there's other options.
Well, if I'm flying from Sudbury, well, unfortunately, it's not gonna go to Buffalo, it's gonna go to
Ah,
Toronto,
Pearson
so.
either way.
It's
Right.
gonna go to
Yeah.
Pearson
The
one
other-
way or another.
the
Unless you're
other-
gonna do the driving thing, but I like the convenience of flying, I can just,
Yeah.
you know, 25 minutes, I'm at the airport,
Yeah.
there, get to meet Toronto, and I know when I travel, I give myself a lot of time for that reason, yeah,
Absolutely.
like there's times where I can breeze right through immigration, or there's times where I'm like there
2
for like
hours.
good solid 2 hours. I'm ready and expected for that, and I just give myself the time. And then afterwards, I just go to a lounge and have a couple drinks, and you know, or go to like the Maple Leaf Lounge, for example,
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
and just wait until it's
Yeah.
time for me to fly again.
Yeah.
It's gonna be an all day thing anyway, so
Yeah, it's true.
you know.
There's a little airport just outside of Sioux, Michigan, that is exactly the same as the Buffalo one, but a lot quicker to get to from Sudbury. Same deal. If you're traveling within the U.S., just drive to the Sioux, go over the border there, go into the airport
That's like
and
4
fly.
hours versus 6.5.
Exactly,
What's it
or
called?
7. I'll find it and I'll get it the notes.
Put that in the
because
notes.
I wanted to
Put that in the notes.
Can you please put things in the show notes? I have a lot of
Steven's
show
got
notes.
the he knows this word.
It's
Yeah.
not, I don't think it's as far as Petoskey, Michigan, but it's in between, and it's a very small airport, but you know what? When you're flying inter-US, it's so much easier, I mean, than going from Toronto over, and again, convenience versus, if you're able to find a place in Sault Ste. Marie to stay, or a family or somebody, and, just hoof it over really early, you can catch your flight and not even have to worry about it.
And I know that my in-laws go over the border there because they like to go and gamble on the other side of the
Yes.
border in Sioux. And I asked Norm to ask them the last time he was talking to them, because I knew I was taping this episode, if they've seen any changes and that kind of thing, or problems with going over with passport duty, and they haven't noticed a thing. So if you're hesitant about driving over the border for whatever reason, in the Sioux, I mean, and they are there all the time, so they would notice if there was a change.
I feel
And they
like a
haven't
place like
really
BC would
noticed
have less of
anything.
it.
Yeah.
Even though Michigan was a fairly red state in the election, surprisingly, I haven't heard anything from them about friends, neighbors, problems traveling, anything else, and they're there all the time. So
I have family that go across just to get gas and
Yeah,
come
'cause
back.
it's cheaper.
Yeah.
People go across to get milk sometimes too.
Yeah, just depending.
according to the Trump people, we actually bring shoes over. Remember, we
Yeah,
go
yeah.
buy them and we scuff them up to bring them over and cheaper.
The one thing
Do
I
you
used
just
to
see
love.
people go across the
No.
border to get milk?
Yes,
Yes.
You'd be
Sarnia.
surprised.
Oh yes, there's now
Oh.
new rules and there's limits set of what we can bring over.
there's
There never was
a whole
before.
new tariffs
Oh.
now on that list. You're right.
When I used
I'm
to
not sure if they're
travel,
gonna do it
Local.
anymore,
I
but this was a few years ago.
$8 for it. So
Right?
you're
Yeah,
asking the
yeah.
wrong
When you
person.
need
Wouldn't
milk, you'll
you?
pay for it.
I would do that. I'm saying
Yeah.
gas money and people
It's the
questioning
wine
you
that you
and
can buy in
going
the
through your
US
phone
and
apparently.
the dollar value is so.
If you're gonna buy a bottle or two,
no.
wine's not the big deal.
No. Okay.
Beer, harder alcohol is worth it taking over the border.
Yeah, it
That's a
totally
whole
is.
other episode again.
Yeah.
Especially if you go to
Yes.
Costco.
So the cost of the
But
duty,
you
the
can go to
taxes
Costco
on a
in
couple
Alberta,
bottles of wine to bring over the border is not worth it.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, if you're buying like tons, it's good to get the difference and come back
Boxes.
over. Boxes.
Carbordeaux.
Cardboardo, baby. Cardboardo.
Carbordeaux.
Culpability
I know all
factor.
about it.
Well, just to sort of close things up here, a couple of things I thought was interesting. So, nobody here has really been changing their travel plans except for me. Only because, when I say changing my travel plans, I'm not as hesitant about the U.S. Surprisingly, I'm more hesitant about Mexico, but that's based on things that we've talked about earlier. So I want to wait for things to settle down, and because Mexico's also battling with the U.S. and there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff going on there, I thought that's not a cool thing. And then, as much as I was looking at other options, because I always like to add, because I'm trying to catch up with Stephen here, and I'm always looking for other countries to go and visit throughout the year. There's a lot of places that there's a lot of unrest that's happening now where there wasn't previously. So Nicaragua is not a good place for me to go back right now. I've been paying attention to that. So unfortunately, there's some.
Demi-second Nicaragua's not that
I
good.
Go
That's
get-
okay.
go get
I'll
the
go.
orange-
I'll go
orange glass.
directly to Chile to go and get my demi-sec next time. But some of those, some of the countries in that area or whatever are having its own unrest right now, and I'll still never get to Egypt because it's not exactly I heard as a great place to go yet. So there's a couple of places that are kind of like on my bucket list that I need to get to.
That's for another talk.
That's all I know.
Yeah,
My
another
God, we can
topic.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So aside from that, I mean, I guess I had a question here written in my notes was, so if you were hesitant, what would it take to change your mind? But obviously not going to do that. But it seems to be that the loonie and the money is the
loonie
biggest
is the number
It's a
one.
huge-
is the biggest
Yeah.
thing for Canadians. So for all you Americans who might be listening and you were concerned that Canadians are not paying attention, are going to be mean to you, and they're going to not buy your stuff or anything else anymore, we're still coming to spend our tourist dollars.
Absolutely.
So there's always the bright side. When we go traveling, we do tend to tip well, spend a lot of money, go and see the sights, and we eat and drink a lot. So just
And we're very, very nice to you.
and we're very, very nice. And as we clean out your wine cellars, we will
say
thank
sorry.
you
We'll
and
be
say
very
thank
appreciative of
you.
it.
Sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah, we'll apologize as we do.
And we have a lot of property down there as well as Canadians.
We do, yes. We own a lot of stuff down there, which is great. Because there was a couple American farmers, especially those who are being affected now in our retaliatory efforts on the tariffs, that were basically saying that a lot of these new tariffs that we're placing back on the Americans are actually, they were whining that, well, it's hurting us as people, not necessarily hurting the administration. And I wanted to point out that, but you guys were the ones who voted him in.
And that's how you.
Right? I feel
absolutely.
bad about it, but these are things that you didn't foresee coming, and nobody necessarily foresaw it coming to that extent. So I feel bad, but we have to support our own country and locals, and just like you as Americans would do the same.
Absolutely.
Right? I think that's fair.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Well, it wasn't me to close that. But that's okay. That's a good way to close it.
Ching, ching.
Thank you to our special guests, Rachel, Stephen, Nicole,
Yep.
and those of you that may not have heard him, but Norm did sneak in for a glass of wine.
That's all he came- that's
as
all he came
usual.
for.
That's all he came for this time. He'll show up on previous episodes, don't you worry about it. Please rate and subscribe us on Apple Podcast or whatever podcast player you're listening to us on. And until next week, enjoy the rest of your summer and keep traveling no matter what. Cheers, peeps.
Cheers.